What were the spirits who were raised during Jesus' death in Matthew 27, verses 52 and 53, doing during the 3 days Jesus was in the grave? Also, what happens to them after the resurrection?
Okay, in the passage it says, let's see, it says, Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit, verse 50. That's when Jesus dies. Then behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth quaked, and the rocks were split. The graves were opened. Many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised, and coming out of the graves after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. So when the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and the things that happened, they feared greatly, saying, "Truly, this was the Son of God." And so the passage makes it clear that they didn't rise when Jesus died. They didn't come out of the graves when Jesus died. They rose out of the graves after his resurrection. So they weren't walking around for 3 days while Jesus was in the grave, first off. That's the first thing. And so when they would be walking around is during the time that Jesus was alive on the earth and ministering to the apostles, which was for 40 days. So after the resurrection of Christ, he was 40 days on the earth at that point. And the reason that we know that is because 10 days later is Pentecost, and that's when it was 10 days before Pentecost that Jesus ascended into heaven. Presumably what happened, and we don't know this from the Bible, and so two things in connection with this. The ones who came out of the graves after his resurrection would be either people who had just been raised from the dead like Lazarus was, when Jesus raised Lazarus, Lazarus come forth. And Lazarus at that point came out of the grave, lived a normal life, and he died at some point. And so there's a possibility that these guys could be a group that's like that, but you never hear about them again after this point. And I kind of think that what was going on here is that these were people who were actually resurrected. Lazarus's revival from death is not actually a resurrection in the sense that the Bible talks about it. It's a resuscitation. And so he's brought back to life. And it looks like this may be something that has to do with the resurrection of Christ, in the sense of them having resurrection bodies also. And where I get that from is from 1 Corinthians chapter 15. It says that Jesus was the first fruits of the resurrection. He died on during the feast of unleavened bread, and died on Passover, put in the grave, feast of unleavened bread, rose on the day of first fruits. And so first fruits of the resurrection has to do with the feast of first fruits, where you would take the first fruits from the barley harvest and some other harvests and offer them to the Lord. Well, if that's the case, then it's not just Jesus that's the first fruits of the resurrection, it's Jesus and these people. And so again, it's a small group, but that's what first fruits, that's what the symbology of first fruits did. You took a small portion of the first fruits and offered that to the Lord. And it looks like the same thing is happening there. And so I think that most likely what happened was when Jesus ascended into heaven, that these guys were taken too into heaven. And so that's just my opinion, and that's tying it in with 1 Corinthians 15. As far as who they are, it says that they're bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep, and fallen asleep means died. And so these people are people who had died, and they were believers. And so I don't, usually when you think of that, and you're talking about Old Testament saints, we're thinking about David and Moses and Elijah and those kind of guys. These could have been people who died 3 months previously, and so we're just not told exactly who they are. We do know that they're believers and that they were again raised from the dead after Jesus' resurrection, and that they appeared to many. So that's pretty much where it's at. So I got nothing else for you.
All right, there you go.